The last line. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of New Eden Colony's command center, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling orange clouds above. The massive Croaxian warships hung like daggers against the sunset, their crystalline hulls refracting light across the colony's protective dome. 3 days they had waited there, silent and menacing, while the colony's 10,000 inhabitants held their breath. Still no response from the council, she asked, not turning from the view. Lieutenant James Torres shook his head, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. Nothing, Commander. They're still deliberating. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Galactic Council, with its hundreds of member species, was notorious for its lengthy discussions and protocol-heavy decision-making process. But New Eden didn't have time for deliberation. The Croaxians had made that crystal clear. "Play the message again," she ordered, finally turning from the window. The command center staff exchanged worried glances. They'd all heard it dozens of times. But Torres complied. A hologram materialized in the center of the room, showing a Croaxian in full battle regalia. Their crystalline exoskeleton gleamed, faceted surfaces catching the light like diamonds. But their eyes were cold, pupilless orbs that seemed to stare through time itself. "Humans of New Eden." The message began, the translator struggling to convey the complex harmonics of Croaxian speech. "Your presence in this sector is unauthorized. Your species lacks the evolutionary advancement to properly utilize these worlds. You have 48 standard hours to evacuate. Those who remain will be removed. This is not a negotiation." The message ended as abruptly as it had begun. Sarah's hands curled into fists at her sides. "Time remaining." 6 hours, Commander," Torres reported quietly. Sarah moved to the central command table, bringing up a holographic display of the colony. New Eden was humanity's furthest settlement, a marvel of engineering built into the side of a mountain range on a world that had once been considered uninhabitable. Its environmental systems could withstand the planet's harsh storms, its farms could feed the population indefinitely, and its defensive systems, well, they were impressive by human standards. But the Croaxians weren't impressed by human standards. "Status of the evacuation ships?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Same as before," responded Dr. Emily Wong, the colony's chief scientist. "The nearest evacuation fleet is 3 days out. Even if we could get everyone to the emergency shelters, we'd never get them off-world in time." Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing through options they'd already exhausted. The Croaxians had positioned their ships perfectly, cutting off any escape route. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. Their weapons could slice through New Eden's shields like paper. Their sensors could detect the smallest shuttle attempt. "Commander," Torres called out suddenly, his voice tight. "We're detecting energy buildups in the Croaxian fleet. They're powering weapons." "They said 48 hours. Dr. Wong protested, but Sarah was already moving. "They lied," she stated flatly. "Or they decided we'd had enough time to recognize our evolutionary inadequacy." She reached the command console and hit the colony-wide communication system. "This is Commander Chen. All citizens proceed to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." As alarms began blaring throughout the colony, Sarah turned to her staff. "We can't evacuate, we can't outgun them, and we can't hide." Her voice was steady, determined. "But we're not going to just sit here and wait for them to remove us. Dr. Wong, how long would it take to reconfigure our atmospheric processors?" The scientist blinked in surprise. "The processors. They're designed to make the air breathable. Not." She stopped, her eyes widening as she caught Sarah's meaning. "You want to weaponize them." "The Croaxians think we're technologically primitive," Sarah said, pulling up schematics of the massive atmospheric processing plants that dotted the colony's perimeter. "Let's show them how primitive humans can innovate when backed into a corner. Can it be done?" Dr. Wong was already running calculations. Maybe. The processors ionize particles to make them inert. If we reverse the polarity and crank up the power, we could create an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt their shields, Sarah finished. They'll be expecting conventional weapons, not atmospheric processors turned into giant EMP generators. It's never been tested, Wang cautioned. We have to overload the processors. Even if it works, we'll lose our air purification system. We'd have hours at most before the atmosphere becomes toxic. Sarah's expression hardened. Hours are better than the minutes they're planning to give us. How long do you need? 20 minutes to modify the primary processors. But Commander, Wang hesitated. This goes against every safety protocol we have. The Council would never authorize. The Council isn't here. Sarah cut her off. We are. And I'm not asking for permission to save my people. She turned to address the entire command staff. I know what I'm asking. This is our home. Everything we've built here, everything we've accomplished, it goes against what the Croatians and half the galaxy said humans could do. We didn't ask permission to survive on this world, and we're not asking permission to defend it. One by one, her staff straightened, determination replacing fear in their eyes. Torres was already coordinating with the security teams. Wang pulled up detailed schematics of the processors, her fingers flying across the controls. Sarah turned back to the window, watching the Croatian ships as they moved into attack position. They thought humans were predictable, easily categorized, simple to dismiss. They were about to learn otherwise. Begin the modifications, she ordered, and send a message to the Croatian fleet. Tell them. A grim smile crossed her face. Tell them humanity doesn't wait for permission. Breaking protocol. Fleet Captain Marcus Rivera paced the bridge of the UES Intrepid, his footsteps echoing against metal as the emergency transmission from New Eden played for the third time. The holographic display showed Commander Chen's face, determination etched in every line as static threatened to overwhelm the signal. This is New Eden Colony declaring an emergency. Croaxian fleet in orbit. Evacuation impossible. Council notification sent. No response. They're powering weapons. The message cut off in a burst of interference. Timestamp, Rivera demanded. 4 hours ago, sir, Lieutenant Hassan replied from the communication station. It's the last transmission we received before New Eden's long-range communications went dark. Rivera stopped pacing, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical display showing the Intrepid's battle group, 4 destroyers, and their support ships, the most powerful human fleet in this sector of space, and still woefully outgunned against a Croaxian war fleet. Message from Galactic Council Command, Hassan announced. Priority 1. The holographic display shifted, showing Admiral Voss of the Council Defense Force. The Centaurian's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of agitation. Captain Rivera, your fleet is to maintain position. The Council is convening an emergency session to address the New Eden situation. Any unauthorized military action could destabilize. With respect, Admiral, Rivera interrupted. By the time the Council finishes debating, there won't be a situation to address. There will just be dead humans. The Croatians have filed official protest against human expansion in that sector, Voss continued. This is a diplomatic matter now. You are ordered to stand down and... Rivera cut the transmission with a sharp gesture. The bridge fell silent, his crew watching, waiting. They all knew the consequences of defying a direct council order. Sir, his XO, Commander Diana Wells, stepped forward. The Croatians have 12 warships over New Eden. Even if we push our engines past safety limits, we'll never reach them in time. No, Rivera agreed, moving to the navigation console. Not if we use approved routes. His fingers traced a path through the holographic star map, following a dangerous thread of space between systems. But there's another way. Through the Maelstrom. Wells inhaled sharply. The Maelstrom was a massive region of space warped by the collapse of a neutron star. Gravitational forces made it impossible to navigate. Impossible according to Council safety protocols, at least. The Croatians won't expect anyone to be crazy enough to come through the maelstrom, Rivera continued. It'll put us right on top of them, and cut our travel time to 8 hours. Sir, Wells chose her words carefully. That route is restricted for a reason. The gravitational shear alone could tear the ships apart. Not to mention we'd be violating at least 6 Council directives. Rivera's expression hardened. The Council sat in their chambers and debated while the Croatians annexed 3 other species colonies last year. They're still debating the appropriate response. I'm not letting New Eden become another statistic in their records. He turned to address the bridge crew. I won't order anyone to come with me. This isn't a sanctioned mission. When the Council finishes their debate, they'll want someone to blame. I'll take full responsibility. Any officer who wishes to stay behind. All due respect, sir, Lieutenant Hassan interrupted, his fingers already plotting the course through the maelstrom. But we didn't join the fleet to ask permission to save lives. Around the bridge, heads nodded. Wells allowed herself a small smile. I'll inform the battle group to prepare for high-gravity maneuvers. And sir, the crew of the Hyperion wanted you to know they've already calculated their jump vectors through the maelstrom. Rivera felt a surge of pride. This was why the Croatians and the Council would never truly understand humans. They saw rules and protocols, evolutionary hierarchies, and proper procedures. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their resources. It was their willingness to do the impossible when lives were at stake. Send word to all ships, he ordered. We'd jump in 5 minutes. And send one last message to Council Command. He paused, a grim smile touching his lips. Tell them humanity respectfully declines to wait for permission to save our own. The Intrepid's engines hummed to life, power building as the battle group moved into formation. Ahead of them, the maelstrom churned, a violent storm of twisted space that no sane species would attempt to navigate. But sanity, Rivera reflected, was overrated when compared to necessity. All ships reporting ready, Wells announced. Jumping in 3, 2, 1. The stars blurred as the fleet leaped into the impossible, racing against time to reach a colony that the galaxy had decided was expendable. They didn't know Commander Chen had turned the atmosphere itself into a weapon. They didn't know the Croatians were about to learn why underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. They knew only that their people needed them. And for humans, that had always been enough. Underground resistance. Chief Engineer Maya Patel crawled through New Eden's maintenance tunnels, her hands covered in grease and burns from rewiring environmental systems that were never meant to be weapons. Around her, the colony shuddered under another Croatian bombardment. Their initial EMP strike had caught the alien fleet off guard, disrupting their shields long enough to buy precious hours. But the Croatians had adapted quickly, their crystalline ships now pulsing with countermeasures. Status report, she whispered into her comm unit, careful to use the hardwired network they'd rigged through the old mining tunnels. The Croatians could intercept wireless communications, but they hadn't found these old copper lines yet. Processing Plant 3 is ready, came the response from her assistant, Raj. Rerouted power from the agricultural domes. We'll lose the crops, but it should give us enough juice for one more pulse. Maya nodded, though no one could see her. The first EMP blast had taken out 3 Croatian ships. The second had only disabled 1. Each time, the aliens adapted their shields, learning, evolving their defenses. But that's what they didn't understand about humans. They weren't the only ones who could adapt. They're launching ground forces. Another voice crackled through the comm. Dropships breaking through the atmosphere. Looks like they got tired of bombardment. Maya allowed herself a grim smile. The Croatians had expected to simply sweep in and remove the primitive humans. Instead, they'd found themselves in a grinding battle against opponents who refused to follow the logical course of action and surrender. She reached a junction in the tunnels and pulled herself up into a larger maintenance shaft. Here, dozens of colonists worked with quiet efficiency, transforming mining equipment and industrial tools into makeshift weapons. The Croatians had superior technology, but they'd never fought humans who could turn farming equipment into railguns or atmospheric processors into EMP weapons. Maya. Dr. Wang's voice echoed through the tunnel. The scientist hurried over, her tablet displaying complex calculations. I think I found something. The Croatians, their crystalline technology, it's not just their ships. Their combat armor, their weapons, everything runs on the same principles. Crystalline computing. Maya nodded. That's how they process information so fast. But it's also why our EMP strikes hurt them so badly at first. Yes, but look at this. Wang pointed to her readings. Their systems don't just process information. They store it in the crystal matrices themselves. Every time we hit them with an EMP, they record the frequency and adapt. Maya finished. But that means, her eyes widened as the implications hit her. Their adaptation isn't perfect. Wang continued excitedly. It can't be. They're storing more and more data about our attacks, using more and more of their processing capacity to defend against them. Maya's mind raced with possibilities. So if we hit them with enough different frequencies at once, buffer overflow, Wang grinned, the most basic computer error in history. Their crystals will try to adapt to everything at once and shatter under the load. Maya was already moving, calling out to the gathered colonists. Listen up. We need to retune every EMP generator to a different frequency. They think they're adapting to our attacks. Let's give them too much to adapt to. The colonists sprang into action, their movements carrying the desperate energy of people who had nothing left to lose. Maya turned back to Wang. How long until their ground forces reach us? 20 minutes, maybe less. They're being cautious after what happened to their first wave. Wang's expression darkened at the memory. The Croatians had expected to find cowering primitives. Instead, their first assault team had walked into a maze of traps and ambushes that would have made Earth's ancient guerrilla fighters proud. Commander Chen's last message said she was leading a team to the surface access points. Maya said, checking her makeshift weapon. A mining laser repurposed into something far deadlier. They'll try to hold the Croatians at the airlocks, buy us time to get these modifications done. A distant explosion rattled the tunnels, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. The Croatians were getting closer. Maya looked around at her people. Engineers, farmers, miners, scientists. None of them were soldiers. But today they were all warriors, fighting with the most powerful weapons humans had ever possessed. Innovation and sheer stubborn determination. They think we're primitive, she told the gathered colonists. They think we're predictable. They think we'll break. Her voice carried through the tunnels, steady and fierce. But we're human. And humans don't break. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome. Now let's show them what happens when they back primitive humans into a corner. The tunnels filled with renewed activity as colonists rushed to modify their makeshift weapons. Above them, the Croatian ground forces advanced with methodical precision, their crystalline armor gleaming, their weapons charged. They'd moved according to perfect tactical algorithms, ready to subdue the inferior species that dared to resist them. They didn't understand that their perfect tactics were about to meet humanity's chaos theory. And chaos, Maya knew, had always been humanity's specialty. The human factor. Commander Sarah Chen watched through cracked display screens as the Croatian ground forces advanced through New Eden's outer sectors. Their crystalline armor caught the emergency lighting, sending fractals of color dancing across blasted corridors. They moved with perfect synchronization, an unstoppable tide of advanced technology and evolutionary superiority. But Sarah wasn't watching their advance. She was watching their pattern. They're doing it again. She spoke into her hardline calm, voice tight with controlled intensity. Every third squad breaks left. Every second squad checks the high ground. They're running combat algorithms. Perfect predictability. Maya's voice crackled back through the comm. Their weakness is their strength. In orbit, the Croatian fleet maintained their blockade, their ships arranged in mathematically precise formations. They had adapted to the humans' electromagnetic attacks, their crystalline matrices humming with countermeasures. They had calculated every possible human response, prepared for every logical strategy. They weren't prepared for Captain Rivera's fleet to tear through the maelstrom. The space-time distortions hit first, ripples of gravitational force that the Croatian sensors dismissed as impossible. No ship could navigate the maelstrom. Their combat computers rejected the data as an anomaly, an error to be filtered. By the time they recognized the truth, Rivera's ships were already among them. Multiple human vessels. The Croatian commander's harmonics shattered with surprise. Impossible approach vector. Target their flagship, Rivera ordered, his voice steady despite the blood trickling from his nose. A souvenir from their maelstrom passage. All ships, coordinate fire. Let's show them why humans don't follow the rules of possible and impossible. On the colony's surface, Sarah's team watched the Croatian ground forces pause as new data flooded their tactical networks. Their perfect formation wavered for a fraction of a second as combat computers struggled to process the impossible arrival of human reinforcements. That fraction of a second was all Sarah needed. Maya now. Deep in the maintenance tunnels, Maya slammed her hand down on the jury-rigged control panel. Every repurposed atmospheric processor, every modified mining laser, every piece of equipment the colonists had transformed into a weapon activated simultaneously. Each one broadcast a different electromagnetic frequency, a cacophony of energy that slammed into the Croatians' crystalline systems. The effect was instantaneous. Croatian combat armor locked up as their crystalline matrices tried to adapt to thousands of different attack patterns at once. Weapons misfired as targeting systems crashed under the data overflow. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. They're fragmenting. Sarah's voice carried over the comm network. All teams, move in. Hit them while they're overloaded. Colonists emerged from hidden passages and makeshift bunkers, armed with mining tools turned to weapons, agricultural equipment transformed into instruments of war. They struck from all directions, using their knowledge of the colony's layout to devastating effect. In orbit, Rivera's fleet pressed their advantage. The Croatian ships' formations had been disrupted by the electromagnetic attack from the surface, their tight coordination shattered by the cascade of system failures. Their combat computers are trying to calculate new strategies, Rivera's tactical officer reported, but they can't adapt fast enough to human chaos. Rivera finished. Break formation. All ships, execute random attack patterns. Don't let them predict our moves. The space battle devolved into something the Croatians had never encountered. A fight without logic, without perfect patterns. Human ships darted through their lines, attacking from impossible angles, refusing to follow tactical doctrine. On the surface, Sarah led her team through the corridors of New Eden, pushing the Croatians back step by step. The aliens' superior technology meant nothing now, transformed from advantage to vulnerability by human ingenuity. This is impossible, a Croatian commander's translated voice carried over their captured communications. They are inferior, primitive. They cannot. That's your mistake, Sarah responded, knowing they could hear her. You think evolution only moves in one direction. You think superior technology means superior capability. But humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage isn't our technology. It's our ability to break patterns, to do the impossible, to thrive in chaos. The battle raged on, but its outcome was already decided. The Croatians could not adapt to an enemy that refused to be predictable, could not calculate responses to strategies that defied calculation. Their crystalline systems, pushed beyond their capacity to adapt, began to fail. In the command center, Maya watched through surviving cameras as the Croatian ground forces retreated in disarray, their perfect formations shattered. Above, Rivera's fleet drove the alien ships back. Human unpredictability proving stronger than alien superiority. They're running. Maya's voice carried a mix of exhaustion and fierce pride. The mighty Croaxians are running from the primitives. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she watched the retreat. Send a message to their fleet, she ordered. Tell them humanity doesn't need evolutionary superiority. We make our own evolution. And next time they want to test us, don't wait for permission. Just remember this day. Never ask, never yield. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with angry voices as species from across the galaxy debated the events at New Eden. The Croaxian delegation sat in rigid silence, their crystalline forms dulled with the shame of defeat. At the center of the storm stood three humans: Commander Sarah Chen, Fleet Captain Marcus Rivera, and Chief Engineer Maya Patel. This is unprecedented, Council Speaker Vex announced, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. Multiple violations of Council directives, unauthorized military action, dangerous technological modifications. The Croaxian Empire demands reparations for their losses. Reparations. Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chamber's chaos. They attempted to exterminate a civilian colony. They violated their own ultimatum, attacking before their stated deadline. And now they demand reparations. The colony was unauthorized. The Croaxian representative's harmonics trembled with barely contained rage. Humans lack the evolutionary advancement to what? Maya interrupted. To survive on a world you deemed uninhabitable. To turn atmospheric processors into weapons when you threatened our lives. To defeat your superior technology with mining equipment and farming tools. Rivera stood beside them, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. You talk about evolution as if it's a ladder to climb. But true evolution isn't about achieving perfection. It's about adapting to survive. Humanity didn't ask permission to evolve. We didn't ask permission to reach the stars. And we certainly didn't ask permission to defend ourselves. The chamber erupted again, dozens of species arguing at once. The Croaxian representative rose, their crystalline form catching the light. The humans demonstrate our point. They are chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. Yes, Sarah agreed, silencing the chamber. We are. Chaos is our natural state. Unpredictability is our strength. And we're only dangerous to those who threaten our people. She stepped forward, addressing the entire council. You want to know why we succeeded? Because while you were debating protocols, we were fighting to survive. While you were calculating evolutionary hierarchies, we were proving that determination outweighs destiny. Maya moved to stand beside her. You call us primitive because we don't follow your patterns, because we turn industrial equipment into weapons, because we fly through unstable space, because we refuse to accept your limitations. But that's exactly why we survive, why we thrive. Humanity doesn't ask permission to exist, Rivera added, his voice carrying across the chamber. We don't ask permission to defend our homes, and we certainly don't ask permission to prove you wrong about what we can achieve. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Croaxian Empire, with its superior technology and evolutionary advantages, had been defeated by a species they considered primitive. Their perfect tactics had been undone by human chaos. Their advanced technology had been overcome by repurposed industrial equipment. The council cannot ignore these violations, Speaker Vex began, but there was uncertainty in his tone now. Then don't ignore them, Sarah replied. Learn from them. Learn that evolution isn't about achieving perfection. It's about adapting to survive. Learn that sometimes the most primitive solution is the most effective. Learn that humanity will never ask permission to defend its own. She turned to address the entire chamber, her voice steady and strong. We didn't come here for your approval. We came to tell you that New Eden stands. That humanity stands. And the next time you think about dismissing us as primitive or inferior, remember this. We don't need your permission to prove you wrong. The council chamber remained silent as the three humans turned and walked out, their footsteps echoing against marble floors. behind them, dozens of species began to whisper and debate, but the truth couldn't be denied. Humanity had proven itself not through evolutionary superiority or advanced technology, but through the very traits that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive: adaptability, unpredictability, and the unwavering determination to survive. Back on New Eden, rebuilding had already begun. The colony's atmospheric processors hummed with their original purpose once more, scrubbing the air clean. Engineers restored power to the agricultural domes, while maintenance crews cleared debris from the streets. And in orbit, human ships patrolled alongside the planet, a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity didn't wait for permission to reach the stars. They wouldn't wait for permission to defend them. And they certainly wouldn't wait for permission to prove that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't evolution or technology. It was the simple, primitive, unstoppable determination to survive and thrive against all odds. In the end, that was humanity's greatest strength. They never asked for permission to be extraordinary.